question of whether a permanent ladder is required for readily accessible disconnects adjacent to a transformer on a mezzanine hinges on the interpretation of the National Electrical Code, or NEC, requirements for readily accessible equipment. Readily accessible, as defined by the NEC, means capable of being reached quickly for operation, renewal, or inspections, without requiring those to whom ready access is requisite to climb over or remove obstacles or to resort to portable ladders, and so forth. Let's break down the key components of this definition and apply them to the specific scenario involving a transformer on a mezzanine. The NEC doesn't explicitly mandate a permanent ladder for all mezzanine installations with electrical equipment. Instead, it focuses on ensuring that the equipment can be accessed quickly and safely. The absence of a permanent ladder doesn't automatically violate the readily accessible requirement, but it does place a greater emphasis on how access is achieved. Firstly, let's consider the height of the mezzanine. If the mezzanine is low enough that a person can easily and safely reach the disconnects from the floor using a small, stable step stool, then a permanent ladder might not be necessary. The key is to ensure that the step stool is appropriate for the task and provides a secure and stable platform for the person operating the disconnect. Secondly, examine the frequency of access. If the disconnects are rarely used and only require occasional maintenance, then a portable ladder might be acceptable, provided it meets specific safety requirements. The ladder must be of the correct height, in good condition, and used in accordance with manufacturer's instructions and OSHA regulations. Thirdly, consider the potential hazards associated with using a portable ladder. If the mezzanine is located in a congested area, or if there are other hazards present, such as slippery floors or moving equipment, then a permanent ladder might be a safer option. A permanent ladder provides a fixed and stable means of access, reducing the risk of falls and other accidents. Now let's look at the specific requirements for disconnects. The NEC requires that disconnects be readily accessible so that they can be quickly and easily operated in the event of an emergency. This is especially important for transformers, which can pose a significant safety hazard if they malfunction. If a portable ladder is used to access the disconnects, it must be readily available and in good working order. It should not be stored in a remote location or be difficult to retrieve. The person using the ladder must also be trained in its safe operation. Let's explore alternatives to a permanent ladder. If a permanent ladder is not feasible or desirable, there are other options that can be considered. One option is to install a platform with a railing that provides a safe and stable working area for operating the disconnects. Another option is to relocate the disconnects to a more accessible location such as the ground floor. This may not always be possible, but it can be a cost-effective solution in some cases. The decision of whether to install a permanent ladder should be based on a thorough assessment of the specific risks and hazards involved. This assessment should take into account the height of the mezzanine, the frequency of access, the potential hazards associated with using a portable ladder, and the specific requirements for disconnects. It's also important to consult with a qualified electrical engineer or inspector to ensure that the installation meets all applicable codes and regulations. It is important to consult the specific NEC articles related to transformers and disconnecting mean. For example, NEC Article 450 covers transformers, and Article 430 addresses motors, motor circuits, and controllers, which might be relevant depending on the load served by the transformer. Article 110 provides general requirements for electrical installations, including accessibility. Consider the working space requirements around the disconnects. NEC Section 110.26 specifies minimum working clearances in front of electrical equipment. These clearances must be maintained regardless of whether a permanent or portable ladder is used. The working space must be clear and unobstructed, allowing personnel to safely operate and maintain the equipment. Let's discuss the implications of using a portable ladder versus a permanent ladder in more detail. A portable ladder offers flexibility and can be moved to different locations as needed. However, it also presents several potential hazards, including falls, instability, and improper use. A permanent ladder provides a fixed and stable means of access, reducing the risk of falls. However, it can be more expensive to install and may not be feasible in all situations. When using a portable ladder, it's important to ensure that it is placed on a stable surface and that it is properly secured to prevent it from slipping or tipping over. The person using the ladder should also maintain 3 points of contact at all times and should not carry any heavy objects while climbing. In contrast, a permanent ladder should be inspected regularly to ensure that it is in good condition and that all rungs and rails are securely fastened. The ladder should also be equipped with a cage or other safety device to prevent falls. The readily accessible requirement also applies to the secondary disconnect, which is described as fusible. Fuses need to be inspected and replaced periodically, so the location of the secondary disconnect must allow for safe and easy access for these tasks. If replacing fuses requires the use of a portable ladder, then considerations for the ladder's stability, the user's safety, and the surrounding environment become even more critical. Remember, the primary goal is to ensure the safety of personnel who may need to operate or maintain the electrical equipment. A risk assessment should be performed to identify potential hazards and to determine the most appropriate means of access. This assessment should be documented and reviewed periodically to ensure that it remains valid. In summary, the determination of whether a permanent ladder is required for readily accessible disconnects adjacent to a transformer on a mezzanine depends on a variety of factors, including the height of the mezzanine, the frequency of access, the potential hazards associated with using a portable ladder, and the specific requirements for disconnects. A thorough risk assessment should be conducted to identify potential hazards and to determine the most appropriate means of access. Consultation with a qualified electrical engineer or inspector is recommended to ensure compliance with all applicable codes and regulations. Consider the long-term maintenance and operational needs of the transformer and its disconnects. While a portable ladder might seem like a cost-effective solution initially, the ongoing need to set up and use the ladder for routine maintenance or emergency situations could outweigh the initial cost savings. A permanent access solution, such as a fixed ladder or platform, could provide a safer and more efficient way to access the equipment over the long term. Furthermore, consider the potential for future changes in the use of the mezzanine or the equipment installed on it. If the mezzanine is likely to be used for other purposes in the future, or if the transformer is likely to be replaced with a larger or more complex unit, then a permanent access solution might be a more flexible and adaptable option. It's also important to consider the ergonomic aspects of accessing the disconnects. If personnel are required to climb a ladder or use a step stool frequently, this could lead to fatigue and an increased risk of injury. A permanent access solution, such as a fixed ladder with a platform, could provide a more comfortable and ergonomic working environment. In addition to the NEC requirements, it's also important to comply with all applicable OSHA regulations. OSHA has specific requirements for ladders and other means of access, and these requirements must be followed to ensure the safety of personnel. For example, OSHA requires that all ladders be inspected before each use and that any damaged or defective ladders be removed from service. OSHA also requires that employees be trained in the safe use of ladders. When selecting a ladder, it's important to choose one that is appropriate for the task. Ladders are rated for different weight capacities, and it's important to choose a ladder that can safely support the weight of the person using it, as well as any tools or equipment they may be carrying. Ladders are also available in different materials such as aluminum, fiberglass, and wood. Aluminum ladders are lightweight and durable, but they conduct electricity and should not be used near energized electrical equipment. Fiberglass ladders are non-conductive and are a safer option for use near electrical equipment. Wood ladders are also non-conductive, but they are heavier and less durable than fiberglass ladders. When using a ladder, it's important to follow these safety precautions. Firstly, always place the ladder on a stable and level surface. Secondly, never use a ladder that is damaged or defective. Thirdly, always maintain 3 points of contact when climbing a ladder. Fourthly, never carry heavy objects while climbing a ladder. Fifthly, never overreach while on a ladder. Sixthly, always have someone hold the ladder when possible. Seventhly, never use a ladder in windy conditions. Eighthly, never use a ladder near energized electrical equipment unless it is specifically designed for that purpose. In addition to ladders, there are other types of access equipment that can be used to reach elevated equipment, such as scissor lifts and aerial work platforms. These types of equipment can provide a safer and more efficient way to access equipment that is located at a significant height. However, they also require specialized training and certification to operate safely. If a scissor lift or aerial work platform is used, it's important to follow these safety precautions. Firstly, always inspect the equipment before each use. Secondly, always wear fall protection equipment. Thirdly, never exceed the weight capacity of the equipment. Fourthly, never operate the equipment near energized electrical equipment unless it is specifically designed for that purpose. Fifthly, always be aware of your surroundings and avoid obstacles. Sixthly, always follow the manufacturer's instructions. In conclusion, the decision of whether to install a permanent ladder for readily accessible disconnects adjacent to a transformer on a mezzanine is a complex one that requires careful consideration of a variety of factors. A thorough risk assessment should be conducted to identify potential hazards and to determine the most appropriate means of access. Consultation with a qualified electrical engineer or inspector is recommended to ensure compliance with all applicable codes and regulations. Remember to consider not only the initial cost of the access solution, but also the long-term maintenance and operational needs, the potential for future changes, and the ergonomic aspects of accessing the equipment. By carefully considering these factors, you can ensure that the equipment is readily accessible and that personnel can safely operate and maintain it. Furthermore, the definition of readily accessible also encompasses the concept of unobstructed access. Even if a ladder, whether permanent or portable, is present, the area around the disconnects must be free of obstacles that could impede quick access. This includes stored materials, equipment, or any other items that could block the path to the disconnects. Regular inspections should be conducted to ensure that the area remains clear and unobstructed. Another important consideration is the labeling of the disconnects. Each disconnect should be clearly labeled to indicate which transformer it serves and its function. This will help personnel to quickly identify the correct disconnect in an emergency situation. The labeling should be durable and easy to read even in low light conditions. It's also important to ensure that the disconnects are properly maintained. Regular inspections should be conducted to check for any signs of damage or wear. Any damage to a worn part should be replaced immediately. The disconnect should also be lubricated regularly to ensure that they operate smoothly. Proper maintenance will help to ensure that the disconnects are readily accessible and that they will function properly when needed. When designing the electrical system for the mezzanine, it's important to consider the potential for future expansion. If the mezzanine is likely to be used for additional equipment in the future, it's important to provide adequate capacity for the additional load. This may require installing a larger transformer or adding additional disconnects. Planning for future expansion will help to avoid costly and disruptive upgrades in the future. Finally, it's important to remember that the electrical code is constantly evolving. It's important to stay up to date on the latest code requirements and to ensure that your electrical system complies with all applicable codes. You can stay up to date on the latest code requirements by subscribing to industry publications, attending seminars and workshops, and consulting with a qualified electrical engineer or inspector. By following these guidelines, you can ensure that your electrical system is safe, reliable, and readily accessible.